GAMA Resources is a U.S.-focused uranium exploration and development company advancing high-quality assets in the Mountain West region, including the 1,100-acre Green River project in Utah and the 4,500-acre Mesa Arc project in New Mexico, which includes historic uranium resources in the Chama Basin. CEO Gabriel Alonso-Mendoza is here to tell us the story and GAMA's upcoming milestones, initiatives, and its outlook. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. Please remember, this is neither recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Gabe, thank you for joining us. Welcome. How's it going?
Martin, thank you for having me, and it's going well. And thank you for being so supportive of us. And very looking forward to presenting this story to your audience.
Excellent. Well, you've got your presentation deck up. Why don't you walk us through it, and then we can dig into points we will want to uncover more.
Yeah, wonderful. Just a point of introduction. Martin said, my name is Gabriel Alonso-Mendoza, Gabe for short. I am the CEO of GAMA Resources. The ticker is GAMA on the Toronto stock, the TSX-V. And today I'll cover why U.S. uranium is compelling and how our two projects, the Green River in Utah's San Rafael district and Mesa Arc in New Mexico's Chama Basin, set the company up for value creation. The approach that we're taking is very simple. We're going to verify quickly, and then we're going to grow. We have a dense historic data set, and we have great logistics into modern decision-grade results. So with that, I'll turn to a disclaimer. Of course, this is forward-looking statements, and quick note, I'm going to talk about plans that can change. Any historic estimates that we're going to be discussing are non-current, and they're used for context only. Our job here now at GAMA is to verify with modern drilling, assays, and QA/QC. So with that out of the way, let's get into the substance. We built GAMA for this part of the cycle, which is strong nuclear fundamentals, supportive policy, and with two projects in proven sandstone belts with roads, power, and legacy data sets. The execution playbook that we're running is pretty simple. First is RC drilling, which equals more meters per dollar for those that know. We're going to relog the historic holes. Then we're going to run RC twins where it matters. We'll pull selective core only if we need that for QA/QC. Disequilibrium calibration, for those that know, that it happens with these old GAMA logs. Many times it actually increases the grade that we're seeing, which is you'll see later on, and also for metallurgy. Second part of the playbook is quick permitting. We engineer the pads and the roads to keep the surface disturbance under the 5-acre limit, so we stay in the BLM notice of intent lane, or NOI, and we move quickly. And the third piece is that we're going to keep the news flow tight, which I know the market likes to see. We're going to verify. We're going to do targeted step outs. A lot of that have already been identified from the previous historical work. And then we're going to get to an initial resource at 43101 compliant resource, and I'm very excited about that. So basically going to be converting this geology into a valuation that hopefully we're going to be reflected into the market here shortly. So why nuclear in the US? I'm just going to go over the macro of 60 seconds since many are already familiar with it, but the US is the world's largest uranium consumer, but domestic output has lagged. Policy momentum from Washington, uranium enrichment expansion, and rising baseload demand from AI and data centers are all tailwinds for us at this moment. So I'm going to add to that two New Mexico headlines that tighten the story, and maybe some are unaware, but they're happening right where we operate, and I think it's really important that that we're in New Mexico. First is that the U.S. enrichment plant in Eunice, New Mexico, is now approved for LEU plus up to 10% UT35, and that has brought a new cascade capacity online.
Abe,
yes.
Sorry, you gave some specifications. I'm not actually clear on what those are. I presume maybe a lot of other people don't. Could you just sort of clarify what that means?
Yes, so enrichment capacity. So it's the midstream portion of
Okay.
this. So after you produce the uranium, you need to get that enriched. And so a new enrichment capacity has been brought online. It's just been approved in New Mexico, in Eunice, New Mexico. And and the other thing is that the regulators have also advanced some practical housekeeping around that facility. So allowing for just easier expansion of that facility, which is just another signal that the midstream is scaling and not stalling. And I think that, you know, if we look at you know, where these pounds are going to be uh, delivered to after they're produced, you know, the fact that we've got enrichment capacity growing and that we have it in the same state that we're going to be operating in is huge. You know, the basic takeaway of it all is that, you know, we're building pounds where the U.S. enriches them. And so in the end, what that means for Gamma stock price is that that should reduce the perceived midstream risk when utilities and investors also look at our New Mexico pounds.
And this is a toll processing that would presumably, when you get online yourself, that would have capacity to take on your ore, or are you just using this as sort of an example of how things are scaling up?
I'm using it. I mean, at this point in time, we're too early to be feeding
Okay.
into that system. But
Yeah.
basically, it's just showing that, you know, there's been tailwinds, and this is one of them that maybe less people know about. And I just want to point out that it's that, you know, there is expansion of this enrichment capacity that's happening in New Mexico State.
Yeah. So it's not just arm waving, real stuff is going on.
Right.
Okay.
Um, So with that, I'll just move into you know, the two main places where we're operating, New Mexico and Utah. In Utah, it's the San Rafael district. It's a well-known district. In New Mexico, it's the Chama Basin. Less prominent today, but it was explored in the past. So that's sort of an interesting opportunity for us to come into that basin. You know, right now we're sort of all alone, and we've identified what we believe to be the catch basin and the mineralized trend, and we are actively expanding on that. Some of that you've already seen in the market. Some of that's it's to come. But basically, both of these systems are well understood and they're infrastructure heavy. So, you know, a key lens for schedule and the valuation of all this stuff is obviously permits, right? So, you know, we want to stay in this NOI lane, which is this, you know, notice of intent. It significantly reduces the timelines to getting exploration work done and permitting work done, and we're really just gonna you know, stay in this lane until the rocks tell us to move and expand into, you know, a plan of operations, which would require NEPA, an EIA or full-blown EIS. And so for right now, you know, in the early stages of what we're doing, you know, we're going to be staying under that 5-acre disturbance, and we're going to be, you know, just doing the basic blocking and tackling. You know, that preserves the speed to which we deliver results. There's capital efficiencies, obviously, that come with that. And then, you know, we obviously preserve the optionality to go more substantive around the permitting should the asset demand it. So let's talk about New Mexico, called Mesa Arc. It currently spans 4,520 acres across a 4-mile mineralized corridor. This is ground that we have acquired, have recorded rather, since we did the lease agreement that was announced, lease to own agreement that was announced to market a few weeks ago. It basically brings together a bunch of old deposits that were dispersed and operated by different operators, and and makes it one contiguous block. It's all mineralized corridor in what they call the jack pile sandstone member. It's a classic sandstone uranium. Prior operators here drilled it down to 50-foot centers. So that's i.e. indicated resources in places. And they've built grade to thickness polygons, which we've benefited from. We also benefit from road adjacency in key sections. And there's a lot of surrounding oil and gas history, right? So that gives us current as well. That gives us a lot of free subsurface library. So those are old logs and tops that we can incorporate into our structural models, and that's just going to help our exploration efforts and also reduce cost and just add to that depth of data set that we have. And then, obviously, in terms of regionally, we're not just geology, it's a fuel cycle hub. We talked about this enrichment expanding in state. And so that's helpful when we're talking about market access and, what we're going to do with the uranium once we produce it. Here's just a bit more color and a zoom in on the different deposits. As you can see, these claim boundaries were the things that we purchased. And I'll just go back to one slide so you can see the differences there. The private land that's there, we're in discussions with them now. There's the mineral rights we have access to. The surface, we're in discussions on that. But that's if you can see that polygon there, that's that little section there. We've taken this whole mineralized corridor now. And we put that all together, and there's a lot of extension capability, not only in this AR-15 zone and Section 3, Section 4, but also as it ties in together to AR-30 and up here around here onto the western portion. So, historically we've seen really strong grade by thickness pockets here. Local highs are around 4.8, and legacy summaries that referenced additional off-model pounds that were not captured in these internal tallies. So a lot of stuff that we can get some new pounds in pretty quickly. The historic maps even flag sort of possible ISL, which gives us permission to test, not necessarily proof of ISL amenability. But that said, given the bench we have at GAMA, which we'll get into later, especially the recent board member, Dr. John Carden, who specifically worked on this MESA ARC project, we feel that MESA ARC will be a future ISL production center. So I guess how we're going to execute on all this stuff, first thing is confirmatory RC twins in the best gram per ton pockets, grade by thickness pockets rather, which are sections 3 and sections 4. With calibrated downhole gamma and chemical assays to reconcile any sort of disequilibrium in grade. Like I mentioned, a lot of times you get 20% bumps in grade when you do chemical assaying, just because the quality of the work, the quality of the precision of the results is so much greater today than it was then. The second thing, yeah.
Sorry, when was that last exploration done? How many years ago?
90s.
Oh, okay, that is quite old. Okay.
Yeah. There was some work looked at in the 2000s, right before Fukushima as well. But a lot of the drilling was done then. But there's been a lot of drilling. I mean, there's been about 75,000 meters of drilling that we have access to, that we've digitized, and that's we built basically an auditable database from all this work.
And so you've got the logs, but I presume not the cores.
That's right.
Okay.
So we'll do, when it comes to metallurgy, we're going to be doing some selective core, and really only where necessary, because obviously that's a bit more expensive, but we're just going to do it for verification and for early metallurgical work, which will be, some simple alkaline columns and things like that. So that's the second thing that we'll do here. The third thing that we're going to do is hydro testing. So, we need to do pump tests for permeability. We need to do tracer tests to check the conductivity of all this stuff. Basically, does the ore leach right underground?
And
And
sorry to interrupt. The hydro testing, that's for ISR, but the potential for ISR.
Yeah, this is all like early ISR gatekeeping stuff. So we
Okay.
just want to we want to take that risk off the table or
Yeah.
very early on. But like I said, we feel very confident that this is ISL amenable based on the historic internal memos that we have access to, and then of course we have access to John Carden, who's on our board, who was the one that did all this mapping and resource work. Um, so, and then finally, after all this work, we're going to be doing more structural work and geotech work. We'll do LiDAR, to map landslide margins and things like that. We'll drill fences around orthogonals to map faults. And of course, we'll be mindful of pad setbacks and things just to minimize geotechnical issues. So on top of all this, part of the I mentioned earlier, sort of connecting the zones, right? Connecting the zones westward. So now that we've consolidated the land, we'll drill the open areas to the west to test the continuity between the deposit zones, and we'll use RC to keep costs down and let us cover a lot more ground quickly while we resolve the structure and the grade thicknesses. So, this matters to valuation because we basically turn a binary ISR question into like a cheap sequential decision gates by following these steps. And, we're positioned to bring effectively a maiden resource on the best supported pods that we see here sooner. And by using RC, that means faster verification per dollar. So really, driving capital efficiency the most we can now, given sort of the treasury and the size of market cap we really want to maximize the return for each shareholder dollar that's being delivered. And by each, and at this point we have a big runway to multiply. So that's what we're going to be doing in New Mexico. In Utah, where we have the 40, yes.
Sorry, just a quick question before we head off to Utah on the New Mexico. With it sounds like you're trying to get a resource estimate out there fairly quickly. Do you have sort of a goal of how many pounds? Like you do the back of the envelope stuff and think, okay, we think
Right.
we got X amount. Are you sort of making sure, okay, when we think we've got X amount of pounds in the ground, then we pull the trigger? Is there sort of a goal? Because doing a small resource estimate, like it just limits kind of who you potentially are, I think, or do you have a strategy? Can you talk about what your kind of goal of what kind of resource estimate you hope to sort of launch with?
Well, what I want to do is confirm the minimum of the historic resource, right, into indicated. So we've got about 3 million pounds there. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the absolute minimum. But realistically, or let's just say, probabilities are in our favor that we will be able to come out with a resource that is higher than that and potentially, multiple higher than that, because we're going to be one, potentially increasing the grade through the chemical testing, and also more importantly, being able to step out on what was already known step out zones, and also connecting deposit areas that were left, in betweens that were left, with very little work, and
Yeah.
not followed on. So, so basically, I have an internal goal, an internal target of a certain amount of production that I want to achieve out of this company per year from these assets.
Yeah.
And it is, I believe to be realistic, and that's a healthy number. I don't know if I want to talk about that right now, but
Well,
that's
yeah, I'm trying to see if I can wiggle that out of you, that number here. It rhymes with something, or anyways, it's a goal. So, okay.
it's a goal. And look, I think what I'd like the market to sort of extrapolate its own views here early. And what we're going to do is we're going to be putting out news as quickly as possible, and really showing here the upside. Remember, I think there's one thing to keep in mind is we've assembled this land package. Down here to the south is something I haven't mentioned. We've observed grades of over 1% at surface over here, over sort of 10 feet intervals, and these were never followed up on. And so, we'll be drilling down here as well. This is a whole new area, a resource area that we haven't even calculated in when we're talking about the stuff up here. And then I won't say where, but we will be acquiring some more land that effectively we think will capture the entire catch basin in this district. Okay, and so if we're kind of talking about things like that, then people can start to put some numbers together. Remember, what's important here is that at least for us today, is that we want economic pounds. We want to be able to produce a mine plan. We want to be able to put an NPV. I've got no royalties on any of these things, and I have no work commitments. I have very low cost to acquire the existing claims, these here, but of course we've already recorded all this other ground, right? And we'll be recording further ground as well. So, there's no, shareholder overhang or share overhang with any of this stuff. If you go back and look at the purchase agreement, it's a lease to purchase over 5 years, and I have scaled payments that are very modest. And if I believe what I believe in terms of, where the value is, which is in the stock, then as we develop and continue to build, those payments will be significantly less dilutive to shareholders because they're only cash payments and they're very modest. And of course, we have time value working for us on that, especially these days with where inflation sits. So I think all those things lead to potentially a very high return on investment here. And we're just, I want to take it step by step. I want to crawl, walk, run. I think we've got a great set of historic data set. We've got some, great geology that we understand, and it's just basically just going out and just blocking and tackling at this point.
All right. And just quickly, how typically or on average, how deep are you going to be doing your drill holes on this these projects here?
Yeah, that's a good question. The mineral horizon didn't go beyond 250 feet. So if we're talking meters, about 100 meters.
Okay.
So it's very shallow. So that obviously that keeps costs low, and that allows us to put a lot of holes in the ground, allows us to then get more pounds, all that. So
all right, thank you. All right,
yeah,
I think we're good on New Mexico there, and let's move on to Utah.
Yeah, so Utah, where we are, is obviously probably a better known area. We're surrounding some well-known names in Western, and some may know the private company San Rafael. But it's named after San Rafael Resources, named after the district. The belt is called the Acheson Belt. It's a classic sort of Colorado Plateau uranium camp. Nearby historic deposits, very familiar geology. Some practical edges that we have that matter here. One is logistics. So the claim blocks lie between, as you can see, I-70 and Old State Route 24 near exit 149. So the access is excellent. Even quick geophysics or relogging can be done on foot. I've been out here and I've done a lot of work with the exploration team there on just basically parking the trunk and coming out. The second piece is power. There's a major transmission line roughly 3 kilometers away from here. It's three-phase power. It runs along old SR 24, and that'll be useful for drilling and any dewatering and ventilation that we need later on. The third piece is that there's year-round workability. It's flat. There's only brief storm summer delays. And it does get hot during the summer, but we'll plan around the heat with a shoulder season heavy drilling and then some shift management in the summer. The other important piece is water. There's a historic water table at depths around 150 to 250 meters. So that suggests that there's on-site groundwater for operations, and it's a good permitting enabler, right, in the desert. So those are, and then I guess the fifth piece is what everybody that's here has realized already, which is the geology. It's known for these sort of potty, you can see here, these sort of salt wash potty style deposits, but the district also hosts these type 2 blanket ore that's beneath the leached horizon. So that lateral continuity, we think, shows up on our ground. And so when we can do the step outs, we can book pounds a lot more effectively that way. And the guys who helped me here, I'll talk a little more about them towards the back of the presentation. But the guys who helped me stake this stuff, they live close by. They're very active in this area, and so helped me, I guess, pick some really great ground, and we'll see what we do with this. But it's a great option. It's a great sort of easy thing to further delineate, further develop, and if we decide, we've got some great neighbors, so there may be sort of M&A opportunities there that'll help fund a bigger production center in New Mexico if that's how it works itself out to be.
All right. And just to be clear, on the slide, I see a historic resource in belt totaling. That's not on your property itself.
No.
That's just you're showing you've got some solid neighbors there.
Yeah, there is some resources on our blocks.
Okay.
We need to get those into 43101. So we'll have pounds in Utah also in this new report. But yeah, the historic numbers that we're talking about, it's just the belt's just saying, this is a endowed district, and yeah. So this kind of goes into a little bit more of like the targeting. Again, like I mentioned, the salt wash member of the Morrison Formation is the known deposits in the district. That's where they've formed out of. And our ground is down dip of these historic occurrences. So what we're going to do, phase one, NOI scale again, relog the accessible historic boreholes and calibrate the gamma, do a few RC twins to get the chemical assays, compute the disequilibrium factors, run quick bottle roll tests to bracket the metallurgy early on, and then do downhole geophysics to create a defensible gray by ton model before we start scaling the drilling meters. And so we'll avoid program cost creep by clustering the pads and reusing access and running a live disturbance ledger and using a rolling NOI, which is basically finish, reclaim, and then advance. And that just basically keeps us in the fast lane until the results justify a larger program here. But really, again, this is, we talk about blocking and tackling in New Mexico. That's a bigger program. This is going to be a much smaller program. But yeah, it's I guess just sort of proof of concept for the neighbors, maybe more than anything else.
Okay, so this is clearly more early stage exploration that you'd be doing on this compared to New Mexico.
Yes, that's right. So
Okay.
we want to prove this is a this is sort of a deeper extension, a deeper play extension of what the neighbors have going on over here. So it's just about proving the continuity over, and then that makes a nice tuck in. So this slide, just frames where Gamma sits among the U.S. developers and the explorers. I spoke about our re-rating path. We're here just below 3 million Canadian market cap. And the re-rating path is, it's straightforward. We're going to turn this historic work that we did and this historic knowledge that we inherited into compliant pounds very efficiently. So of course, two major enablers. This sort of RC drilling, right? Means more meters for the same dollars, and accelerates verification ahead of these step outs that we're going to be doing, so that we can then generate a larger maiden resource beyond what the historical has shown so far. And then, the New Mexico midstream, build out and the strength there just improves the perceived market access and really, supports better EV per pound comparisons once we publish the results, because we'll be in a state that's not only producing these pounds, but also turning them into a finished product. So, there'll be undoubtedly access to programs and different things that we can tap into that we have access to through DC, and and not to mention what you've already seen sort of around forest service and things like that. Definitely applies to what we have going on in New Mexico, and in terms of approvals and fast tracking and that kind of thing, but then also, contract, government contracts and different, avenues to source non-dilutive financing, that, sitting here in New York and with all the depth of our network at Amvest, we've been able to tap into pretty effectively. And so we'll continue to do that here for the benefit of shareholders of Gamma. So just to kind of sum up some of the recent catalysts and some of the upcoming catalysts, we bought this uranium portfolio, right? I mean, Martin, when you came in, there was really nothing. There was a trust, which I thank you for. And we took our time and we found these great assets, and we took that step to acquire. We've just done a name change very recently. We've done a rebranding. We're basically focusing this thing on we're not just a uranium company, but a nuclear company. You'll see developments over the course of the next 12, 24 months that'll show that we're really not just here to, become a miner. We've got sort of a bigger ambition here. But, of course, we're going to start with what we know and start defensively, start from the ground up, right? No pun intended there. So that's sort of what the plan is for Gamma as a whole, as a company. How we're going to do that, we're going to, with Utah, we'll file these NOIs, we'll do the cluster pads, we'll do a disturbance ledger, we're going to reuse the existing access, we're going to relog the open holes, 4 or so RC twins, quick bottle roll testing, and that'll get us the data that we need for the resource report. In New Mexico, we've already built an auditable database. We've got historic probe results, polygons, claim docs, internal memos, resource statements. We've got a really nice data set there that we're going to be leveraging. Again, we'll do RC twins in the highest pods, but then we'll also, do selective core testing. We're going to be doing the step outs to the rest to across the newly consolidated ground to test the zone connectivity. And again, we're going to be staying well within this NOI scale while we prove it all up. The other thing that we're going to be doing is in New Mexico is the drone LiDAR to pin the landslide margins. That's something that maybe technically some people may want to know about. And then do the hydro testing as well. all of that just complemented by the fact that we've got this additional data set of oil and gas surface and downhole data that we're going to start an active campaign on that to map the legacy wells and to create the setbacks for the ISR production scenarios. Some other stuff that I think that we'll do, which is really no extra capex. It's just some work on our end. It'll be like a stakeholder brief pack. It'll be like a one pager on the enrichment approvals and new capacity to show the regional readiness and to show local benefits. I mean, a lot of this stuff is, you got to be on the ground. You got to be talking to the locals early on, and so we want to just show that we've got, we've got we're U.S. passport holders. We're serious about this business. We're serious about the development of really the bigger play, which is energy security and so we'll make sure that we provide as much color as we can and show that we're educated about this stuff. We're connected. We're a serious institutional type player coming back into this market and coming back into New Mexico after it's been sort of out of favor for so long. And so I think I'm pretty excited about that. So just snapshot on us, small company, right? But we run it lean. We're royalty free on both assets. And needless to say, that's good for MPV, right? We have a clean chain of title with this lease to own structure that we did, and which is on just those initial claims that we purchased, and a clear title of ownership on the majority of the ground because we have recorded those ourselves since the initial lease agreement was signed. Also, that defined buyout. So those lease terms, I would encourage everyone to look at. I mean, I structured those to give sort of clarity and eliminate some of the perils that we constantly see as Amvest. Just putting the Amvest hat on for a minute, we see so many companies, we see so many deals. We have very often is there these vendor shares, right, that are just like constant overhangs, right? Like when are they gonna? They're automatic sellers, and there's how are we? It's always like who's selling? We don't know who's selling. Is there blocks? So I eliminated all of that from all this. I didn't want any of that overhang, and I didn't want any expensive work commitments either. So there's no work commitments, because a lot of times those work commitments come, and the market's not there. And so you have to raise capital in like potentially, inopportune time. And so that's just dilutive. So I really wanted to remove any sort of overhang and any sort of headwind that would come from the structure piece of all this. And because we're taking this approach, we've got these historic resources, we've got this historic data set, we've got this sort of blocking and tackling approach to just get pounds proven. This NOI first plan keeps the burn rates controlled, and we'll still be able to deliver decision points to the market that matter and that hopefully will be reflected in the valuation. So if you don't mind, I'll just turn to the next slide about the people. So I mentioned Amvest Capital. I'm the co-founder of Amvest Capital. We're an investment banking and asset management firm that's based in New York City, and it's focused exclusively on natural resources. Bob Doyle and his team at Pacific Opportunity Capital, they're amazing. They're responsive, educated on all the nuances of the TSX. If anybody's ever worked with Pacific Opportunity, they know. The people that are there, they're so hardworking, and they're so basically always seemingly available to put in the hard work, and so they're very on top of things. We're never missing audits. We're never, we have no filing issues. So no unnecessary headwinds as well there. Andrews is a QP, and he's the author of 43-101. He lives close by. And he's just a wealth of knowledge, and geologically, and will, he's driving distance to the assets, so that's going to be a cost savings and a time savings when we expand on the exploration campaign. Willis and his partner Ben, who's not listed here, they're a great team. They're based in Salt Lake City. Some people may know Terra Nostra. They do a lot of land staking and management and land management. Willis is a very educated uranium geologist and he's been very helpful in understanding these trends and where they lie. They're going to continue to be helpful to us, through reconnaissance, through land management, through the exploration program, through the staking programs, and because we purchased the assets from them, I wanted to kind of create some alignment and some accountability. And more importantly, when we were talking about these assets, Dr. John Carden, I'll just skip over Mark for 1 minute, even though Mark's a legend. Dr. Carden is Ben's father, and who's Willis's partner, and he was the exploration manager for Magnum Uranium, and he's the one who created the resource model for the Mesa Arc deposits, and he's got obviously that historical knowledge base. But then also, as a director, he's got that, accountability to shareholders. And so that helps, I guess, for me, reduce the risk and make sure that everyone's sort of operating, in the most upfront and honest possible way. And, in this business, there's all kinds of, sometimes you buy something, you don't know what you bought. And so, even though you could be the sort of the do the most DD and all that stuff. So, I wanted to have some physical accountability, and Dr. Carden, he joined right away when I asked him. It wasn't even an issue. So on top of that, he's been operating here, and he's just getting things done in terms of the exploration side. So he's just like a wizard in permitting. And that's going to be super helpful for us, obviously, as we expand the exploration program. So on Mark Saxon's been our chairman for a long time. He's a legend in this business. He's not necessarily the uranium business, but in the mining business. And he's a great geologist. He's an advisor. He's an investor, and he's a really good friend. Stephen Goodman, he's a successful capital markets and mining executive. He just came off two big deals, one with Rio Tinto for Copper Junior, another with Freeport-McMoRan for another copper private explorer co. So he's got big corporate relationships, but also spent a lot of time in investment banking in New York, and so has a good Rolodex as well of investors, and is was CFO when those two deals happened for those companies, and so he's very sort of diligent on making sure we've got he's on the audit committee, he's making sure that everything's done by the book. So I really appreciate that. Chad is a strategic advisor. I've known Chad for 15 years. He's a creative genius. He's the one who helped build the new logo for us, and a lot of the sort of the color scheme, and a lot of the sort of the messaging, but him and I have been aligned for a long time, and been working together for a long time on a bunch of different projects. So I think just the takeaway is that for the market is trust that we'll scope these programs very tightly. We're going to test these hypotheses quickly. We're going to let the data drive the next dollar. We're not going to be inefficient with our capital, and we've got a very good corporate governance structure in place to make sure that the checks and balances are there. So that's it. Why Gamma? Why invest in Gamma? One line, I guess. Right commodity, right districts, right starting data, right size programs, and we've got now a bigger and better, stronger midstream backdrop right in our backyard. So I guess we'll just let the results do the talking, and if anybody wants a deeper dive, whether that's geo models or the NOI plan or the ISR decision gates, whatever it is, just reach out and we'll set up a technical session. The details are there below, and if someone wants to reach me directly, it's instead of info, it's just Gabriel at Gamma Resources Ltd.
Gabe, thank you. Tons of information there. That's great. What are the next steps, or what should viewers be expecting to see next from Gamma over the coming weeks or months?
So, news on, more, land.
Okay.
And, starting to, get these permits, put in place. News on the exploration, and, campaign that we're putting together, sort of what that's going to look like. Um, and, then, some news on hopefully on the results of that work. So that'll help, put the pieces together of, the data points together of what we're, trying to achieve here.
All right. Any final thoughts to leave people with before we wrap it up here?
It's I guess just for those that feel like maybe it's too small, or maybe you want to wait and see, that's perfectly understandable. I'm an investor in this company, probably the largest individual investor through Amvest, and we're going to be, moving this up. I think we've got a big valuation gap to close, that can be closed pretty quickly. So that's exciting to me. But that said, I'm I'm not going to be selling stock that quick. So, this is this is a longer term, business, and it's effectively going to be that. It's going to be a business. And so this is just the early days, and I hope to look back at this in 2 years and say, wow, what look at how far we've come.
Gabriel, thank you very much for introducing us to GAMA. Much appreciated. Have a great day, and I'm looking forward to seeing updates and news as you guys progress. Everyone, good one.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.